The opinions and views expressed in the following program are those of the speakers and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? But can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
Hello, everybody. Welcome inside a Monday episode of Running Point on ysnlive.com. Bringing in the new week with me, I'm Anthony Hartwig. As always, Running Point brought to you by our good friends over at Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. I'm going to put them in that top right-hand corner of your screen so you always know where to go. If you are in the market for a new or used vehicle, no one takes care of you the way that Greenwood Chevrolet does. There they are right there, top right-hand corner of the screen. Greenwood Chevrolet is the presenting sponsor of Running Point, so we take time to thank them every day for what they do for not just Running Point, but YSN in general. They're one of our main sponsors, and they help us do what we do. So anytime you thank us, you're also thanking our sponsors, Greenwood Chevrolet being one of them. Got a great show for you today. Not only are we going to recap the weekend, we're also going to talk tournament time today. It's boys soccer on the stage today for tournament time. We have volleyball tomorrow. We're going to break stuff down. We're going to have some fun with some postseason. And we're also going to recap the weekend. And then we continue to go the extra mile, just like Greenwood Chevrolet, by continuing to feature player profiles on the show. And we have Katie Lissy, the senior from Crestview. Her interview is going to be played on today's show. So we'll feature a player profile like we always do as well. So we've got a fun one for you. Let's start off like we always do into the recaps into last weekend. We'll pop in the scoreboard on ysnlive.com, which is always presented by Burnett Pools, Spas, and Hot Tubs. Let's see how the weekend went down in football. Week 9 is in the books. It was Friday the 13th, and for some teams, it was definitely a nightmare. For other teams, it was definitely one that they want to remember. Pymatuning Valley made it a nightmare for Ashtabula St. John, 60-6, the final score to that one. You know, Pine Valley is the kind of team that can really throw their weight around, and when they get a run going, they're hard to stop. They're like a wrecking ball almost, because they're so big, they're so physical that when you get them running downhill, that momentum hard to stop. And Pymatuning Valley ran all over the field Friday night. I'm so used to saying last night with recaps. But Friday night, Pine Valley just did everything they wanted to do on the running game, and it was just it was all Lakers from the jump, 60-6 final score there. Austintown Fitch, they were an angry football team. They got bounced back from their loss to Massillon, Washington. They beat their rivals Boardman on the road, 36-0 the final score there. And watching this game, I think you could tell that they had a very good week of practice. They were kind of fine-tuned again. They realigned everything. They got kind of sloppy in the Massillon Washington game, and although Washington might have been a better football team on paper, they were not 42-7 better. And I think Austintown Fitch and TJ Parker, they knew that. They watched the film. They picked up on the things that they could control. There were definitely some unforced turnovers there that did not help their cause. And in this game, the controllables, they ironed them down. Boardman has been a scrappy team all year. To shut Boardman out one is a feat. Congratulations to the defense for doing that. But then just to keep this as a non-competitive game, Boardman has lost this year, but most of their games have been games where they find ways to score, they find ways to fight back, they find ways to make it hard on other teams. And this seemed like it was not that case for Fitch. They came into Boardman, they were well rounded, they were disciplined, and they made every play they had to make to make this a game where they didn't have to sweat towards the fourth quarter. I'm sure Fitch fans were excited for a game that they didn't have to, get out the defibrillators in the fourth quarter. Fitch gets the easy win, 36-0. Final score there. Beaver Local, they were able to beat Cambridge 61-14. We were having discussions in the audible call in the studio watching these two games, Beaver Local and Pontotoc Valley, on which team is going to win the night, because they were both gearing towards that range where it was going to be a lot of points put up on the scoreboard, and we knew that pretty early, so we were all kind of joking around with each other. Well, who's going to win the night? Well, it turned out to be Beaver Local by 1 point, 61 points for them, and they win over Cambridge. Final score 61-14. Remember, Cambridge put up a pretty good fight against East Liverpool, so this is actually an impressive rout for Beaver Local. I thought this game was going to be a little bit more competitive. LeBray, they needed to win after their tough loss to Liberty last week, and they look like the Vikings have looked at on their best, right? The Vikings have been a team this year that the inconsistency bug has hit them. At times they look like they're just rolling on all cylinders, and at times they have to take some pit stops and work along the way. And last week against Liberty, that was definitely the case. They weren't the same team, but they got right back to work against Campbell Memorial, dominated this game from the start. And once again, when you're playing a team that you're better than on paper, one of the things that you have to look at when you're watching the game and watching the film is, no matter who we're playing, what are the controllables that we did well? What did we execute that has to be executed? Whether we're playing a team that is winless or a team that is 10-0, there are things that are completely in your control that you have to be able to execute. And I think LeBray did that pretty well on Friday night with the win. 37-0 over Campbell. Solid performance by the Vikings. Solid performance by West Branch. We all thought this was going to be an offensive show and Carrollton was going to score with West Branch, but that defense showing up big time. Their offense did what we always expect them to, right? West Branch's offense has had a reputation this year and last year and 2 years ago and 3 years ago that, like, hey, we can score with the best of them. But because of that, I feel like sometimes their defense gets really overshadowed by a really good offense. And this was one of the games where the defense got to showcase what they can do when they're put in situations where they can be ultra aggressive. Carrollton is a running team. They don't like to pass the ball. So when you put them in a bad situation where they have to be down by 14, 21, then your offense can be super aggressive and take chances because they're not a threat running, throwing the ball down the field. So when West Branch was given that opportunity to say, hey, we're going to pin our ears back, we're going to be an aggressive defense, they stepped up big time, and you saw what they could do when they're put in that position. 14 points given up to a Carrollton team that averages much more than that on the season. A good defensive performance by West Branch. Offense doing what they always do, of course. We go into an old school Youngstown rivalry, Ursuline and Cheney. And it was Ursuline getting the win 32-16, doubling up the Cowboys. And what can you say about the Irish that hasn't already been said? I mean, Ursuline's just a team that's rolling on all cylinders. We've talked about their discipline this year. That's not shaking at all. Sometimes you see teams be able to stay disciplined through 4 or 5 weeks, and then all of a sudden, it starts to jump off a little bit. They get a little bit complacent. That hasn't happened. The Irish have completely stayed away from game-changing mistakes that are unforced this year. And that hasn't been the case always in years past. And this year, not saying they've played pristine, perfect football throughout the 9 weeks. Like, they haven't done that. Like, there are always things that they can do better, but they're not making those, critical game-changing mistakes in clutch situations. They're a very disciplined football team, and they're going along with that with the talent that we all know they have. So that's a dangerous mix. When you have talent, you have discipline and work ethic. Those three things stirred in a pot can become a very dangerous formula for teams that have to play them in the playoffs. Let's go into Lakeside getting probably the most surprising win of the night. Not just the fact that they won, but the fact they dominated this game 30-6 over Conneaut. I don't know if Conneaut overlooked the Dragons or if the Dragons had a really, really, really good night, but we saw them play Geneva last week and we saw glimmers of hope in that Dragons offense, especially early in the game. We talked to Sam Torres about it on the scoreboard show that week where they were having success running the ball out of the shotgun early on in that game. Their first drive, they went right down the field, stalled out on a fourth down. Well, that's a strong Geneva team that you kind of saw little glimpses of Lakeside being able to do really good things against. And they must have taken that small glimmer of, okay, we're doing good things and ran with it in practice this week because they put up a great performance, probably the best football they've played all year. You might argue the best football they've played in several years with a big win over Conneaut, 30-6. It hurts the Spartans when it comes to playoffs for sure. This is a game they needed to win. It would have been a big win for them because Lakeside is, of course, one of the bigger teams down there in Ashtabula County. So it definitely would have been a big win for points, but not to be. The Dragons fight hard. They defend the den. And they kind of blow out Conneaut. That's the unexpected thing. Wouldn't have been surprised if they won because Conneaut hasn't been a team that is blowing people out, this year. They've been a team that kind of stays with teams just because of the style of play. They're a running team. They play physical. They slow the ball down. That kind of doesn't bode to blowing teams out, right? Because you're taking a lot of time off the clock, which means you're not going to score a ton of points. So Conneaut's a team that has been playing close with teams, but really good football. So to see them not be close in week 9 was very surprising. And Lakeside needs all the credit in the world for having a great game plan, executing it perfectly, and getting the 30-6 win. Cardinal Mooney and Ashton O'Brien is the one you have to talk about for this one. What a game this kid had. And Mooney beats up on their Youngstown rival East. Final score there, 48-18. A big win for Cardinal Mooney, and not a score. That's an awkward score in football. You don't see 18 too often, but in this game, Mooney just put all the pieces together. We had a couple of weeks there in the middle of the season where it was like a little bit of a lethargic Mooney team where they were playing either good defense or they were moving the ball. They just couldn't put the whole puzzle together, and they finally did that in this game against East. And of course, they get the win by 30 points. Big one for the got ahead of myself because the Potters are next. Big one for the Cardinals. East Liverpool gets the win over Oakland. They go on the road, double up Oakland 40-20. And they do it the way they usually do things, by controlling the line of scrimmage. East Liverpool, if I had the rank like the offensive lines in the Ysn family, they'd be in the top tier for sure. They have a really good offensive line that controls the line of scrimmage, and when they're doing things well, they execute as a unit. They are hard to stop on the run, and the thing I love about East Liverpool, they use that run to set up pass. They're not a one-dimensional offense, and they will absolutely throw the ball off of play action and get people out of system on defense because of that. Next up, we have East Palestine getting their second win of the year. Congratulations to the Bulldogs, 29-6 over Latonia. Big win for East Palestine, their first road win of the season. Their first win earlier in the year came at home against Wellsville. So they have a road win, they have a home win. Bulldogs starting to put things together as a program. It's baby steps. It's learning how to walk before you learn how to crawl before you walk, learn how to walk before you run. And what I like about this East Palestine team this year is they're starting to learn how to make those winning plays, right? Starting to learn how to put teams away, not getting their own way in games that they're better, games that they're just physically dominating. Don't find ways to lose those kind of games. And East Palestine has not done that this year. They've been in games against really good teams, and now they're winning games against teams that they're dominating, obviously, physically. So the Bulldogs, that's a first step. Finding out how to stay away from self-inflicted wounds and play clean football. The next step, obviously, is just have that winning mindset. And I think they're going to build that. They're going to be able to say, hey, we have some results this year. Like, we got some wins. and how they've responded to wins. I mean, they didn't win off that Wellsville win, but you looked at that tape in I believe it was Columbiana they played after Wellsville. But you look at that tape after the win, like it wasn't because East Palestine was high off the win and lazily walked into the game. So I liked seeing that. I liked seeing that they were able to respond to a victory and get right back to work. And we'll see them do that again this week as they try to cap off the season in week 10. We have Edgewood getting the big win over Jefferson. There was some revenge factor going on here. Like you could tell how bad Edgewood wanted this. We saw the post-game pictures of them getting that getting that trophy from Jefferson. This is the battle for Ashtabula County, right? So it's a trophy game, and you could just see how bad they wanted it. This was one they lost 2 years in a row to Jefferson, in a rivalry that before that Edgewood kind of dominated. So Big Brother wanted to fight back in a big way, and this year Edgewood reasserted themselves as the big brother in that rivalry in a big way. 54-7 final score over Jefferson. Quite possibly the game of the night happened in Hubbard as Girard sneaks away with a 21-14 victory. Big third quarter from both teams, right? Because it was very low scoring first half, and then a couple of plays happened back and forth to both teams in the third. And then in the fourth, Girard gets that go-ahead touchdown with about 7 minutes left, and they stop Hubbard going the other way. Hubbard had actually a pretty good drive going down at the end of the game, got all the way to Girard's 40, but then that offense, if you get behind the chains a little bit for Hubbard, they're not built for, 3rd and 11, 4th and 12, and that's the situation they found themselves in, and they could not capitalize on that opportunity they got when they got into Girard's territory. They could have maybe scored a game-tying touchdown if that drive, obviously continues, but Girard's defense steps up big time, and their offense does just enough. 21-14, final score. Hubbard. Now, you talk about playoff spots, and this is going to be talked about a lot this week because obviously we're in week 10, and we're starting to look at the playoffs and the picture and all the scenarios every team needs in week 10 to get into the playoffs. This wasn't a must-win for Hubbard. They're not mathematically eliminated, but this was one of the ones where you look at it and you go, they would have really, really liked this win. They needed this win, not mathematically, but maybe realistically, because now to get into the playoffs, you look at where they're sitting. Hubbard's either going to have to beat South Range or get some help. I don't think they can lose that South Range game and then just get into the playoffs without some other teams falling too. So Hubbard wanted this win because if they beat Girard, there would not be nearly as much pressure to beat South Range this week. And now there's a lot of pressure to go and beat South Range. And how teams respond to that are different. You could have a team that comes out with all the confidence in the world because this is it. This is our season. We need to win, and we're going to do whatever it takes. And those kind of teams can be dangerous. But we can also, we've seen plenty of teams in the same situation kind of give up before it even starts because they're like, well, playoffs ride on the beating the team that's undefeated in the conference, and we haven't beat them in as a part of the NE8, and you start to get that defeatist attitude a little bit, and you never know how a team's going to respond to that situation. What I do know is this Hubbard team is extremely well coached, so I would be surprised if it's not the if it's the latter. I'd be surprised. I think they're going to come into this game knowing that this is it. This is our season. There's no reason not to give everything we got into this game, and I think South Range is going to get a heck of a fight. Whether they win or lose, they're going to know Hubbard was there. They're going to understand that they played Hubbard, and they're going to feel it in the morning because I think Hubbard is just going to play like a team whose life depends on it. And quite frankly, it might just depend on that game. And those kind of teams are always dangerous to play, no matter how much of a favorite you are going into it. Berkshire beats up Grand Valley 40-0. The Badgers, really good football team, and they have that brand new stadium. They're playing well on that field, and they beat Grand Valley by 40-0. And Poland wins the Battle of the Bulldogs 28-0. Look at all the shutouts, by the way, in Week 10. We've had a handful of them. And that's something that we did not usually see throughout this season, especially on 1 week. I would wager that this is the most shutouts in 1 week that we've seen so far this year, and this is another one. 28-0, Poland gets the win. And then one right back to it, Liberty gets the shutout over Champion, 49-0, all Leopards. And like I said, this was an opportunity for Liberty to just take everything they could out of this game, hit their foot on the gas pedal, and drive right into Week 10. They're probably going to have to win in Week 10 too to get a formidable playoff spot. So Liberty took this opportunity. They ran with it. They played a great executed football game, and they took care of business, which is what good teams are supposed to do. Southern Local took care of business. This was a game that was delayed about an hour. It didn't start until about 8 o'clock because of the light situation in Salineville. So after sitting and waiting and you always wonder what team's going to come out with the energy when you mess up a routine, right? It's not routine. It's not what the kids are used to. Obviously, an extra hour before kickoff. How do you handle it? What do you do for it? And Southern handled it really well. They had this game from the jump. This was never in doubt that Southern was the better team that night. They rolled to a victory, 42-14, and it really, unless Lisbon gets some help, it knocks Lisbon out of the chances for an EOAC championship because they were rolling to it. They were in first place. If they won this game and won in Week 10, they'd have at least a share of the EOAC. But it just was not to be. Southern Local gets the best of Lisbon. Final score once again, 42-14. Louisville goes into South Range. This was 10-8 at halftime, and the Raiders made some really good halftime adjustments and ran away with it. Final score 38-8 after 28 unanswered points in the second half. The Raiders were up 10-8 at halftime, but at one time in the second quarter actually trailed 8-7. And it was one of those games to start where the Raiders were just about a second behind. Like their timing just didn't look quite right, and they calibrated. I mean, what else can you say? Halftime adjustments were amazing. They came out almost looking like a completely different team after halftime, and they took care of business like they have to. I mean, this is a Louisville team that had one win on the season, but it's an upper division school, so still going to give them some computer points heading forward as they're trying to jockey with Perry for the 1 seed in Region 17. Lowville all over Waterloo, 40-8, the final score there. Mike Ballone continues to be just incredible this year, and he hits Lucido for a big play early in the game. A turning point really in this game. Waterloo had a big drive going in their first drive of the game. They got all the way down inside the 10, and then Lowville forced a fumble, scored on the next drive, and it was pretty much Lowville's momentum from that point on. But you kind of wonder how that game might have gone if the Vikings were able to score on that first drive, because obviously this is a place where Lowville has struggled in the past. The last time they went to Waterloo, they got into a dogfight, only won by 3. So if Waterloo scores first in that first possession, you wonder what kind of creeps into Lowville's heads. Like, what is it about this place in Waterloo that we can't get past? But luckily for the Lowville offense and unluckily for the Vikings, luckily for the Lowville defense, unluckily for the Vikings offense, Lowville forced that turnover and then never turned back from that point. Marlington gets the win over Salem at Salem, 37-20. Salem showed good fight because they could have laid down and died, but they had a good fourth quarter, tried to make it close, but they just couldn't get enough steam, obviously, to come back from their hole that they were in. 37-20 final score, Dukes win over Salem. Western Reserve continues to impress. They get the win over Mineral Ridge, 28-14. Shout out to Luke Henning for everything he's doing this year for Western Reserve. He's a guy that needs talked about as much as possible. Anything is possible in Western Reserve when Luke Henning is under center. Newton falls to Brookfield, 55-20. Final score there. How about Struthers playing with their hair on fire, 21-0. Their defense shuts out Niles and gets the win at home. And I'll say it again, since that lost to South Range 37-33 with a lead with 2 minutes to go. That heartbreaker. I love to see Struthers' response to that. They have not lost since, and quite frankly, it hasn't been close since. They've been dominated ever since that game, and that's a turning point in their season. And how they've handled that turning point has been incredible, because you can see a lot of teams, especially at this level of football, where they're all young and they're young kids, right? We forget that these athletes are kids. You see a lot of them maybe in that kind of tough loss, it starts to define their season. They start to lose close games and not able to make plays down the stretch. Struthers, not even the case. They're saying we're not even going to get in that situation anymore. Maybe they saw things on film that say it shouldn't even been close against South Range. I don't know, but they're kicking butt, taking names in the last couple of weeks of the season. They have a big one in week 10 though, Poland against Struthers in week 10. That'll be a fun one to follow for sure. Springfield gets the defensive win over McDonald. This one was teetering on the likelihood that it might get into the teens. If you're lucky. Springfield scored a couple of momentum touchdowns, later on in the game. 28-7, the final score. Tigers over McDonald. Big one for them coming up, because Springfield has Lowville in week 10, and that has definitely MVAC implications there. United stays in their spot in first place of the EOAC. There's a couple of teams tied now as they win 38-6 over Valley Christian. That's a revenge game from last year for sure. The way that Valley Christian was able to beat United last year, this time not so fast, as the Eagles of United get the win in dominant fashion. Columbiana dominates Wellsville 53-7, all Clippers. And, we've talked about the Clippers before in this show as well. They lost a lot of really close one-possession games early in the season. And although your record, they say, the old cliche in football, you are what your record says you are. And I get it, because at the end of the day, they lost those games. They didn't find ways to win, and they have to, take accountability for that. But there are things that you have to look past a record with, because Columbian obviously was good enough to be in those games and be right there. So when they finally figured things out and they put together winning football, you're starting to see the fruits of that labor, because Columbiana has been winning now, and they're on this win streak, and it's because they've kind of put away the start of the season, and they said, we're not going to be defined by that. We got into some close games. Other teams made some plays. We didn't. And you move on, you try to make the playoffs and try to win those close games that you're inevitably going to fall back into. This one, though, not close. Final score, once again, 53-7. Columbiana beats Wellsville in Firestone Parks. Matthews and Wyndham score all 22 of these points in the fourth quarter. This was scoreless through 3. Matthews has just enough to get the win, 14-6. Garrettsville Garfield scores 49 unanswered points and wins over Crestview 56-7. This was tied up at 7. Garfield went right down the field in their first possession, scored. Crestview answered really quick. And then Garfield woke up. And there were a couple of defensive touchdowns and a couple of more defensive turnovers that put them in great position. And the game slipped away pretty quick from Crestview before they could blink. Garfield all over the Rebels, 56-7. Also, shout out to Eric Geddes from Garfield, their quarterback, who is committed to Old Dominion for baseball. He did that this weekend. So congratulations to him. We see we're doing work on the football field, but we know, of course, baseball is where you shine the brightest. And you're going to be continuing your baseball career at Old Dominion as a Panther. So congratulations to Eric Geddes from Garrettsville Garfield for your commitment to play baseball at the next level. We can't wait to see what you do in your future, see what you do in your baseball season this year for Garfield. Get one last chance to cover you there, and then can't wait to support you in Old Dominion. Congratulations again to Eric Geddes. Orange falls to Lutheran West 55 to 15. Final score there from Orange. We have Edison falling in another close one, another tough one for Edison against a good Harrison Central team that is, I think, 4th right now in Region 17. 27-12 was the final score. A little bit correction there to our scoreboard. I think we initially thought it was 17, but we were corrected on the scoreboard show that it was 27-12. Jackson Milton gets a narrow victory over Fairport Harding on the road, 26-20. The final score there, big one for the Blue Jays. I think anytime you win a close game, there's a feather in your cap. Like every close game kind of puts you closer and closer to a team that can make a run in the playoffs because you're going to play close games. Like you're not going to go a whole playoff run and not play games that you're close in. So every time you get more experience playing in those kind of situations, feather in the cap, no pun intended, because it's the Blue Jays, but they do get the win there, 26-20. Then we have Sebring falling to what we're told was a 8-man football powerhouse in Toledo Christian, 52-0. Final score there in 8-man football in Toledo for Sebring. They fall. Mohawk gets the big win over Freedom Area, 44-20, and a big one over against Neshannock coming up for Mohawk. So they got a big stretch for PA football for the Warriors. That's your week 9, the football recap. Let's go into Saturday real quick and see what went down on Saturday. Obviously, there was some playoffs girls soccer and some regular season boys soccer and 2 football games to talk about. JFK, this game had to be moved to Liberty because of the ongoing situation that was happening in Cleveland around the Cleveland Central Catholic School. Obviously, I want to send good vibes, and I think we all do. I think I speak for YS in entirety for the prayers, thoughts to everyone in the Cleveland Catholic community that is dealing with that ongoing situation. We know it was not an easy time to go play a football game. There were no fans in the stands, and we hope that we were able just to give you something that day as the broadcast on YSN brought to you from Liberty. And one of those things where we wanted JFK to win. Was a YSN school, but you can't be too mad about the community getting the win there from Cleveland Central Catholic, as they do beat Warren JFK 28-13. Final score there. Archbishop Hoban, same score, just flip it. YSN wins this one as they go to Buffalo and beat Atoll Springs St. Francis. So, excuse me there. 28-13. Final score. Hoban still undefeated. They go to New York, have that Empire State of Mind in Buffalo, New York, and get the win down there. Boys regular season soccer, South Range beats Salem 4-1. Cardinal Mooney, they are all over Badger, 12-0, the final score there. And then Hoban falls to Walsh Jesuit 2-0 in boys soccer. And then we have where it all counts, all the marbles, playoff soccer. Here we go. Newton Falls, they fall in a tough one to Bristol, 3-2. Heartbreaker for the Tigers. 7-2. Grand Valley gets the win over Brookfield. A close one in Columbiana, but the Clippers end the Raiders season 4-2 there in the tournament. I'll scroll over to the last row after we do these first 3. We saw Howland beat Lakeside in their first tournament game 8-0. We know Howland's one of the top teams, so no shocker there. Crestview advances 8-0 over Maplewood. We saw Edgewood fall to Streetsboro 3-1. West Geauga beats Ursuline 3-0. Final score there. Canfield takes care of Girard 8-0. Congratulations to Macy Toporser for breaking another Canfield record this time. It is goals in a season. She had goals number 39 and 40 in this game. So now goals in a season, and that record is belonging to Toporser. Macy Toporser from Canfield breaks that program record. And then we saw Riverside edge out Fitch 3-2, the final score there. Let's scroll over and get these final 2 games. Salem falls to Alliance in a heartbreaker 2-1. Final score there. Riley Hutton gets into the top 30 in the OHSAA as far as career goals go for her. So congratulations to Riley on an incredible career. Can't wait to see you during the basketball season. And we know you're going to continue to do great things, but Salem does fall 2-1 to Alliance. Waterloo beats Garrettsville. Garfield, they end the G-men season, and the Waterloo Vikings move on 8-0. The final score there from Waterloo. So those are your girls soccer finals. This is all tournament games, so obviously this is win or your season is over. So congratulations on the teams that advanced. But the sad part of the bittersweet part about tournament time is we obviously have to say goodbye to the teams that end their season. And so we do unfortunately say goodbye to the teams that did end their season on Saturday. And we congratulate them on an awesome season. And we wish them the best of luck going forward in whatever they're doing in the winter, in the spring, whether it be basketball or waiting to spring for sports or not playing another sport. You never know. We have boys soccer going on tonight. We will preview the matchups tonight on YSN at the end of the show. But first, we're going to take our first break of the day. When we come back, we have a player profile with Katie Lissy, senior from Crestview. We'll play that after this break on Running Point, brought to you as always by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Back in a bit.
21 News delivers the news as it happens, using the latest technology from where it happens.
Live here outside the Mahoney County.
On air, online,
Wednesday afternoon weather update.
Very dangerous.
and on the 21 News social media platforms.
I'm on the road right now.
21 News, the Valley's only locally owned source for trusted news since 1953.
Craftsmanship to us is 60 years of pride and dedication.
Passed down from generation to generation.
The hardwood floors that your kids take their first steps on.
The solid wood doors you quietly close at night.
The things we create day in and day out are the products that end up turning your house into a home.
At Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods, uncompromising quality and craftsmanship built our business.
And it will keep us moving forward for generations to come.
Going the extra mile at Greenwood Chevrolet means we want to take care of the community that takes care of us too.
And we have to work together always. And that's how you stay in business for 40 years.
You know, I love being a helper because when I help somebody, it makes me feel good.
It means a lot that I can make a difference in others' lives.
So I will do everything I can and just being there for them every step of the way.
I want them to know within the first 5 minutes that they could depend on me. That's what going the extra mile means, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Before the lights come on, before the workday begins, before a long day is ended, or it's time to have fun. It all starts with the people at Joe Dickey Electric. From replacing a light fixture in your home to building a substation for your business, no job is too big or too small. The people of Joe Dickey Electric power them all. Joe Dickey Electric, over 60 years of powering the Mahoning Valley.
I'm Anthony Hartwig, your host with you, and we are always brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. We thank them for going the extra mile for you. If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, make sure to head on down to Greenwood Chevrolet. They will take care of you. And we try to go the extra mile every day, follow their lead by playing our player profiles that we're able to get throughout the season and featuring them on the show, giving these players an extra limelight. And we do that today as we venture into Crestview volleyball. First chance to hear from them, but you know, they're gonna make some waves in this postseason. So I think we'll be hearing from them quite a bit in the next couple weeks. Here's Katie Lissy, one of their seniors, and her player profile on Running Point. We hope you enjoyed this interview. It was a great one, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Anthony Hartwig here with a Crestview volleyball player profile. I'm joined by Katie Lissy. Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yep.
This Crestview volleyball team is just one of the more dominant teams we've ever seen. They just shirred up their 8th straight conference championship, and that spans through 4 different conferences that they've been in over that span. So from your perspective, what's it like to be part of a program that is just experiencing such a window of success right now?
Well, our coach actually just had to remind us how big that is to have such a long stretch of successes, because we don't really think about that all that much, if that makes sense. we usually just kind of like focus on how to get better, and that's about it really. And then every day we just work day in, day out to try and get better.
So what was it like when coach tried to like just make you guys grasp how big this was? I mean, you guys have not lost a match inside the MVAC, and you've only lost one set as a program since the MVAC started 4 years ago. When you hear stuff like that, I mean, does it get to you, or do you just kind of, okay, that's cool, let's keep working?
I would definitely say the latter, because there's just like a moment of pause after she said, like, this is a big deal, guys, and like, don't take away from the success, because just because, like, you know, in years past we've also been successful, but this year's also been successful, so don't take away from that like success, and to, I don't know, just keep getting better really. I mean, we're just kind of like, I don't know, constantly striving to like rise above, if that makes sense.
Does the success ever bring you or any of or the team any kind of pressure to say like, hey, we have to hold up the Crestview that everyone expects us to be, and you know, obviously with success comes expectations from the outside, or does you guys not feel that at all?
I feel like I personally really, it doesn't really weigh too much on me. Sometimes I think it will get to us. I feel like last year got to us a little more than it did this year. But we do definitely feel like a target for other like schools and stuff, essentially, which we find exciting because we want people to try their hardest to take us out and to play us well so that we can get better and work harder. So I feel like we feel that target more than that pressure, if that makes sense.
You're one of the seniors on this team, so I have to ask what it's been like for you to go through this year, knowing that it's your last go around and everything that you do with this Crestview program, it's the last time you're doing it. How have you been handling all those emotions that can bring?
Well, I haven't really, I don't think it's really hit yet that this is going to be my last year doing all this. But I feel like what really sets apart this year, aside from it being my senior year, is that we're kind of having a little more fun with it, if that makes sense. Like, we've had fun in the past years, don't get me wrong, but this year it's about really just enjoying the sport and enjoying the people in it too, and just having fun while working hard and pushing ourselves.
You guys can get real reflective for senior year. You know, it's the time when you can really start to think about your career and what you've done and the memories you've made. What are some of your favorite memories with this Crestview program that you've already made with this team?
That one's kind of tough. I honestly would just say there aren't really very many games that like come to mind for that, but I just honestly feel like the memories I've made with the people and like my friends and the team as a whole really stand out. Like some of their silliness and just like goofiness, really just, we all have fun with it.
I want to talk about that silliness, that goofiness, that looseness. Usually, you know, the stigma that comes with a super successful team is they're stoic, you know, they're taking care of business, they're just all focused on the court. But you guys balance that with an extreme looseness and extreme silliness and extreme, just like you said, having fun with it. How are you guys able to so masterfully balance being loose, but also, like you said, working hard and making sure you're getting the focus and the work done?
That is definitely something that we've struggled with a couple times this year, especially, where we've either been too far serious or too far silly. Usually that's when coach kind of comes in and is like, hey, you guys need to kind of buckle down and focus. Like, it's great, we're having fun, but now's the time to work a little bit harder or to focus and like get a little more serious. Or she'll say the opposite, where we're playing way too tense and that we just need to let loose and have more fun with it. And usually after her telling us that, or like, I don't know, just showing us that, it's usually when we like kind of, it clicks and like we realize like, oh yeah, I guess we were playing too tense, or I guess we were playing too serious.
talking about you on the floor, you bring, a role to this team that a lot of volleyball outsiders overlook with a right side hitter and your defense. You definitely have the blocking numbers that you're putting up this year, and you started to really find a rhythm offensively, it seems like, the last couple of weeks. What do you think that you bring to the team that is so important from your perspective?
I definitely feel like just playing your part and focusing kind of more on yourself so that the others can like rise, if that makes sense. So like without me picking up tips on right side, we wouldn't have a good set or we wouldn't have a good hit, or without me setting a good block for Abby to, or whoever my middle is, to close to and get those blocks. Like that's really important. And definitely just trying to like not compare yourself to other people, as like everybody has their jobs, their roles to complete. And I can always look to them. If I'm having an off day or something, I can always look to them and be like, all right, well, they're focusing and they're doing their job. And I can try and focus on what I can do better to help other people on my team be successful or to like solidify their role.
You're not the only person on this team that has that role player mentality either. There are a lot of other pieces that aren't necessarily getting to like the big stats that are glorified by the media, but they're definitely doing important work on the floor. What makes this team and this program so easy to buy into that mindset for you and your teammates that have to do that, do you think?
I think it's just how like this team is. Like the people on it really, like I know Abby and Grace, like they're definitely like our top like players for sure in stats and just in general, but like they're not snooty about it or anything like that at all. Like they're still silly. They still celebrate when everybody else does something good, and it's just genuine. And like their genuineness, it's fun to see and it's fun to be around and it's fun to play with 100%. And when they do get those kills or something that like someone who maybe doesn't have as big of a role or whatever, like if someone like that contributes, they celebrate for us too. And it's just really fun being around them and people like that and our whole team in general, like celebrating and stuff each other.
When you talk about celebrating everybody, one of the things I love when I come to Crestview is seeing the varsity players watch the JV, and not just watch it, but you're engaged in it. You're celebrating every time that one of those JV players does something great. What's so important about doing that and about making those JV players know that you're watching, you're supporting, you're behind them, you want them to succeed?
I don't know. Probably just because like I remember being in their shoes, being like struggling to find, I don't know, maybe if I was having an off game or something, just looking up to them and being like, oh, like maybe they just seeing that they're here to cheer for me no matter what. They're here to have my back no matter what, even if I have an off game or something, or vice versa. Even if like I'm doing amazing, just hearing them like cheer for me and like being involved in what I'm doing was just really what motivated me to try and get more minutes on the varsity court when I was younger. And I feel like that's really important to try and just like motivate them and just get them like really involved in the program and stuff. And it's just great to see anybody succeed in this program at whatever level they're at. It's really fun.
We got to ask you about Coach Howard, because she's definitely one of the most respected coaches in the area. We only get to see her, on the sidelines and before a game. We don't get to see her in practice and all the things that you guys do. From your perspective, what is something about Coach Howard that maybe we don't get to see that you think everybody should know?
I guess maybe just her like trust in us and her bluntness almost with us. Because if we are doing like, if we are performing at a level that she thinks we can get higher than that or something, she will let us know and we will go back and work on it for sure. Like if we're struggling with a certain drill or something and she knows that we can do much better, she will tell us that and she will be very blunt with us. She will not sugarcoat anything, and she will push us that far. And just like kind of watching her push us that far also creates like a self-discipline in us too. So we want to get to that level. We want to push harder. We want to do better at this drill, even if we're struggling at it. And just having that like constant like motivator is really important.
Not a lot of teams have pushed you this year. You've only lost one set, and you've only been in a handful of competitive sets as a total. But you've always responded to those moments, even though you haven't been pushed a lot. What do you think gives this team the ability to, when they are get pushed, or when they do have teams come in and compete or give you a game, what gives you that ability to not matter that you haven't been there before? You haven't been pushed that much. What is it about this team that's able to do that?
I would say it's probably a mix between our practices and also just the sheer excitement to play, have competitive sets and have competitive games, because we've been looking forward to this all season. Like this is what we practice for. We practice super hard, and like we want to get like better, and the only way to get better is to play competitively and play against teams that will challenge us, or try and maybe like find our weak points. And it's just super, I don't know, exciting to like have that sort of challenge and stuff. And I feel like we don't really get in our heads as much because we're like, well, we practice extremely hard. This is what we practice for. This is like the reason why we play this sport. Just that kind of feeling of like excitement and just like can't wait to play, I guess.
You're a senior, which means we do have to talk about your future as well and what you plan to do outside of high school. So what are some of your future plans? What are some of the things that you see for yourself in your future?
I'm not too sure yet, but I do think I'm going to be going to like a local college. I'm thinking about YSU, and like major wise, I've been thinking psychology a lot, or maybe forensic psychology, something to do with that. And I do want to stay involved in like some athletics. So I might do like intramurals or like club sports in college just to stay active and continue with that.
What got you going down the psychology path? What kind of things made you interested in wanting a career in that field?
Honestly, just like I have always had like a fascination with how people's like minds work and how people think about things really. And just like, I don't know, to be able to study that and to be able to study maybe like outcrops of people or like exceptions and stuff like that of how people think and how our brains work would just be really neat, I feel like.
All right, Katie, before we let you go, I want to give you the chance to thank your support system and the people that are in your corner, the people that have been there for you throughout your career. Whoever you want to give a shout out to, I'm going to give you the time to do that.
I would just honestly like to thank my parents because they've been a big part of it, and my family as a whole. Like they come to every game that they can, and I really appreciate that. Also, like the coaching staff and just my teammates 100%. I know they always have my back too. And yeah.
Katie, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We appreciate it so much. We wish you the best of luck the rest of the senior season. We hope this tournament run goes as long as it can for you guys so you can hold on to that senior season as long as possible. We wish you the best of luck again, and we can't wait to talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
Katie Lissy, one of the seniors from Crestview, and what a great career she's had. I think one of those players that is so important to Crestview's success, but obviously when people watch Crestview, they see Abby Imch, they see Grace Hour, they see Lainey Hour, they see the numbers that those three put up, and they forget about a lot of the stuff that players like Katie do on a nightly basis. One of the most important things she does is she's a first line of defense for soft touches over the block. So as a right side in the front row, she's always kind of back there waiting for teams to try to tip it over Abby Emch. And when you have a blocker like Emch, you're getting a lot of teams trying to go over them. And Katie Lissy's usually getting those balls, which is and part of the defense. Everyone on the volleyball court, everyone that has the in the sixth rotation, they all have a role. They all have an important piece to play. And one of the things I love about the sport is you can't have one, two, or three people doing their job and the other three not. So when Katie's on the floor, she has a very specific job, and if she wasn't doing it well, trust me, Chris, she would not succeed. They just wouldn't. It wouldn't be as successful. Well, it wouldn't be as successful of a volleyball team. They would not be 22-0, and they would not be the number 4 team in the state in Division 3. Promise you that. Let's go into the scoreboard, back into the scoreboard, I should say. Preview tonight's matchups because it is tournament time in boys soccer, and we got matchups tonight to keep an eye on. Brookfield versus Liberty in Brookfield tonight. Salem hosts Alliance. We have Conneaut going to Madison, Edgewood going to Jefferson, and Garrettsville Garfield will go to Southeast. We have Grand Valley going to Wickliffe, Campbell hosting Heartland Christian, Lakeview at Girard, a NE8 matchup round 3 in tournament time there. We have Matthews going to LeBray, Niles going to Canfield, Orange goes to Field, Perry goes to Pontooning Valley, West Branch hosting Ravenna. We have Waterloo traveling to Waynedale. East Liverpool and Beaver Local, blue versus red in the biggest stakes imaginable in the tournament. Could not dice it up in either way. And then Fairfield will go to Ursuline in boys soccer as well. We got one girls soccer playoff game, Edgewood going to Bishop Rosecrans for a playoff game there. That is a 6:30 p.m. kickoff there. And then we do have one volleyball regular season game, Wyndham at Lisbon, wrapping up the official wrap-up of the volleyball regular season tonight there. I want to remind everybody, tournament games will not be on the network unless they are sponsored for both boys, girls soccer, and volleyball. Obviously, we'll have our blanket coverage of football playoffs, but if you want to see your volleyball or soccer teams tournament games covered, we just need a sponsorship. And so if you're a school or a team that is interested in having their tournament run covered, contact us. We'll try to get some. We'll try to see if we can get something worked out. Obviously, try to find a sponsor that's willing to give us what we need, because the OHSA makes us pay to broadcast. So we need to cover that fee, and if we get that, then we'd be more than happy to cover your tournament games. So boys soccer, we'll definitely keep an eye on these. You'll definitely be able to find scores and recaps on ysnlive.com. As always, want to thank everybody for tuning in today to Running Point on YSN. We'll be back tomorrow from 1 to 2 as we recap all that playoff stuff from tonight, and we also preview the first day of volleyball tournaments tomorrow. Sectional start tomorrow in volleyball. We'll be there. We'll be there for a preview tomorrow on Running Point. So tune in tomorrow, 1 to 2 as always. Brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet.